Yo, BlackRock's most recent Bitcoin report could be the key that unlocks trillions of dollars to flow into Bitcoin. Supposedly, a lot of their clients have been asking them, what is the optimal allocation? So BlackRock has answered their concerns in a new report on Bitcoin. Today, we're going to discuss the key finding from this report and discuss why this could be the next domino that unlocks a wave of institutional FOMO. So no more delay. Let's bring our legendary co-host Optimus Fields and our special guest for today. We have Frank Holmes. Frank Holmes is the CEO and chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies. HIVE is the first ever miner to go public back in 2017. So we're really hyped to have him on the show today. Let's jump straight into the news, everybody. So what is the optimal allocation? I cannot believe this is happening. 5 years ago, BlackRock Larry Fink was not a big fan of Bitcoin, to say the least. Fast forward, a couple years later, 5 years later, and number go up does what number go up does best, and all of a sudden everyone's a big fan of Bitcoin. So this is a headline for audio listeners from Bloomberg. It says BlackRock says up to 2% Bitcoin allocation is, quote, reasonable range. It goes on to say the world's biggest asset manager says that Bitcoin does have a place in multi-asset portfolios. Giving Bitcoin a 1 to 2% weighing would produce a similar risk profile to the so-called Magnificent Seven technology stocks in a standard 60 to 40 portfolio of stocks and bonds, according to a BlackRock Investment Institute paper released Thursday. That's a, quote, reasonable range to devote to Bitcoin, as anything beyond 2% would sharply increase crypto's share of overall portfolio risk, the paper said. It goes on to say, it's a potential blueprint for investors wondering how to think about allocating to Bitcoin as the cryptocurrency soars to record highs above $100,000. President-elect Donald Trump's embrace of the sector, combined with his pro-crypto picks for top government jobs, have powered the rally, fueling billions of dollars into Bitcoin ETFs, including BlackRock's ETF. However, those dazzling returns come alongside Bitcoin's infamous volatility. I would personally say that's a pro, not a con, which is why taking a risk budgeting approach to portfolio construction makes sense, according to the paper. So I think this is absolutely massive news. I would say 2024 is the year of the legitimization of Bitcoin in the eyes of traditional investors. And of course, you had that with the approval of the BlackRock ETF in the beginning of the year. And of course, the recent election of a pro-Bitcoin administration with the election of Donald Trump, and also the Republicans winning the House and the Senate as well. So I want to take advantage of the fact that we have Frank Holmes in the house with us today, and also give a shout out to the almost 600 of you guys watching live right now. Guys, smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the stream so far. So Frank, what is your take on this news? Is this massive? I am a class of 2016 Bitcoiner. I could never have imagined in a million years that BlackRock would be one of the biggest promoters on Bitcoin on legacy financial media. Frank, what's your take?
Ho, ho, ho. It's great to be with you. And absolutely, it's good news. Santa has arrived. And I think it's important when they create those models, 60-40, they're very statistically driven models of bonds and equities and what portion. And so Bitcoin shows up in the category called the alternative asset class. So does gold, so does silver, so does art, original high quality art, like a Andy Warhol painting or a Picasso. They would show up as an alternative asset class. And I think the 2% weighting will probably go up, but it's a great start when you have a complex that has $11 trillion advocating that it's fair and reasonable to have that amount. Now, I see some of the chatter of why it's not 87%, et cetera. It has to do with that DNA of volatility. Now, I know this crowd believes that volatility is vitality. And many of my friends think Viagra, vitality is all victory. It all start with V's. And I think when we look at that world, that what is the DNA of volatility over 10 trading days of Bitcoin versus the S&P or versus gold. And that's how they construct those portfolios. And then over 60 days. So we did have a run up to 100,000, which you'd believe that Bitcoin was up 2 standard deviations over 5 years of data rolling 20-month periods. What does that mean? It means that there was a 95% probability of it correcting, and it did. It fell down to the low 90s and then came right back up. So over this sort of 20-day period, that greater the volatility impacts their allocation. But I think as more people adapt to Bitcoin, the volatility will go down, and therefore the allocation to Bitcoin will rise.
Incredible. I also want to get your perspective on this, Frank. Nico, I'm hearing a double on your end. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. Should be fixed. We are doing this live. Frank, I do want to get your take. HIVE Digital Technologies holds a tremendous amount of Bitcoin. You guys currently hold, I don't know if this is recently updated, I'm getting my information from bitcointreasuries.net, but roughly 2,700 Bitcoin. So could you explain what your strategy is about that? And just to give you guys a perspective, you guys are one of the biggest hodlers of publicly traded companies in the world. So could you explain a little bit about what your thought process is behind that and the value that brings to investors?
Well, being the first crypto mining company when we launched, we were a big piece of Ethereum when it used to be proof of work. One time we were 6% of the global network, and we started hodling Ethereum. And then as Ethereum went away is Bitcoin, and we expanded our Bitcoin footprint. We have always believed that you should own the investment also as much as possible. Pay your electrical bill, pay all your salaries, pay all the costs you have for being public, and then hold on for dear life to as many coins you can stack. And that has always been our philosophy. And so we're happy that from a year ago, our Bitcoin holdings increased by 67% on our balance sheet. And I think we have close to the most Bitcoin per share valuation metric.
That's absolutely incredible. That's very, very exciting stuff. 2025, it feels to me like it's going to be an incredible year. And I think we're going to have a surprising end of 2024. Opti, what is your perspective on this? I'm so happy we have Frank on the show today. What's your perspective on the recent BlackRock report and the complete 180 from our, one of the biggest Bitcoin promoters of the year, Larry Fink? Opti.
Yeah, employee of the year, Larry Fink.
Max Kaiser's words.
Yeah. Well, I find it very interesting because we did kind of mention this when the ETF got launched, that now we basically have, some of the smartest people out there that are going to be shilling Bitcoin. And, by the end of the year, we finally get some reports. And of course, I think another interesting aspect of this is that all of their clients out there are asking them a, very simple question. I think we even get asked this all the time from people watching the show or friends and family. It's like, how much Bitcoin should I be buying? And obviously, we're super Bitcoiners here, and we're like, buy as much Bitcoin as you can. Kind of what Frank was saying, like, have as much Bitcoin as you possibly can, but still pay your bills and, live your normal life. And that's the ideal allocation for you personally. But I do find it interesting that they are at, minimum saying 1% to 2%, which is, going out to a lot of high net worth individuals. And at least we're getting to the point now where they're like, yeah, you need to add Bitcoin to your personal balance sheet, your personal portfolio. And hey, if we're starting at 1% to 2% right now, like, we'll take it. Obviously, I think those numbers will get pushed up in the future as more people realize that, hey, Bitcoin is the best thing to be holding. But as the chat was saying, it is kind of interesting because we did get a report coming out of BlackRock, I think it was about a year ago, from a senior analyst, and that was what the chat is saying. Like, they were recommending 85% portfolio allocation. But I think it is interesting because they can't come out here and be like, yeah, guys, go 100% in on Bitcoin, go 85% on Bitcoin. They still have, a reputation out there where they got to kind of seem conservative out here, because if they go out and be like, yeah, go all in on Bitcoin, I think they might take a slight reputational hit. So I think these conservative numbers are them kind of easing their way into telling their customer base, like, you want to have a lot of Bitcoin, and 1 to 2% right now is probably a very conservative bet for most people, especially considering that we just got the numbers that came out yesterday from the Microsoft shareholder vote. And it was 0.5% of the people voted for Microsoft to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So I think we still have a lot of education out here. Like, there's still a lot of trepidation and people being concerned about adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet and holding it personally. So obviously this is why we're seeing kind of a conservative report right now. But I'm can only venture to guess that that's going to increase, that we're going to get to the point where, Charles Schwab was last week recommending at least 10%. So I think these numbers will slowly but surely creep up. But hey, I'm okay with BlackRock telling everyone out there, just hold 2%, like conservative numbers, just hold some. It's really going to the just get off zero meme that Bitcoiners have been talking about for a long time. It's like, it really doesn't matter. Just buy some and get your toe in the door. And then as you understand what's going on in Bitcoin, obviously your portfolio allocation will start to increase. So I'm okay with conservative numbers right now. Obviously, as a Bitcoiner, we're like, yo, you got to pump these numbers up. Like, we got to get a bigger shill from BlackRock. Come on, Larry, do your job.
Oh man. All right, everybody.
I think it's really important that you look at someone managing more than $10 trillion and they say 2%.
Yeah.
That's $200 billion.
Yeah.
All right, that's $200 billion. That's more than the market cap of all the crypto mining companies. So it's pretty significant dollar-wise. If they were to move in 2%, that's of a magnitude that would increase the ETFs by almost fourfold. So I really do think it's a big number. But being in the fund business also, what you realize is that all the rules that were coming out by Gensler and the SEC have made it very difficult to talk about your funds. And the same thing is with BlackRock. What Bitcoin has done for BlackRock is made it to talk about all the time. So BlackRock's name is every day in the newspapers and on these, we're chatting about it right now. And so it's like free publicity that he could never buy for his $10 trillion. You could never get a spend budget like that. So Bitcoin is the biggest gift from a marketing point of view of investment awareness of BlackRock.
Yeah, no, and again, I can't. That's a really good point. That's a really good point, Frank, because it 2% of, I believe they have $11 trillion dollars assets under management. So it might sound like, to a lot of people in the chat, to perhaps a lot of our audience, 2%, they're like, those are rookie numbers. You got to get that up to 80. But, to these, if you're a large company, if you're an institutional investor, or you're a high net worth individual, that's a lot of money, right? It's not something to look past, right?
It's bigger than most GDPs in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's huge.
100%.
I think one of the other parts is the original Bitcoiners, and you started in 2016, and I went on that journey a year later in 2017. Today, people don't know why Bitcoin. It's just that it's going up. So there's this fever to buy it. And I think that's a risk. Like, you go put gas in your car so you can drive it. Why do you buy Bitcoin? Not just because the price is going up. It's because there's a fundamental component of your freedom. And it's about the balance of power that the individual has as digital wealth away from overbearing, oppressive governments and banks. And we know this century, in 2002, Argentina wiped out your US dollar bank account. If you had $10,000, they gave you $3,000 of pesos. Today are worth 30. They wiped them out. And the only reason why that economy is still surviving and thriving is not because Milei came in. It was before Milei, was US dollars. There's $25 billion stashed in pillows and mattresses that keeps that economy going. We go to Canada and we had the Justin Trudeau in the reaction to the trucker strike over freedom, over the right to protest. During COVID, he took away those rights. He took away the rights to be able to go and complain regarding unfair rules. And guess what? He turned around and froze your bank accounts. He harmed people to pay their mortgages, feed their children. It was overreach and overbearing. So here we have, it's happened in Canada, it's happened in Argentina. I can give you other countries around the world. So Bitcoin is part of that preservation, private property rights that's digital. I was really trying to help investors understand, don't buy it just for the price action. This is why the price action is taking place.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, and I beautifully put the example of Argentina. I didn't know that. I didn't know about like how essentially the economy was using the dollar as this lifeboat. I really believe that a lot of it came from a lot of the regulatory changes that the new Milei administration was coming in, but fascinating insights, guys. We still have a great show for you guys. We have 1,500 live viewers between YouTube, Rumble, and X. If you guys are enjoying the show, smash the like button. You're listening to Simply Bitcoin Live, the most watched daily Bitcoin live show on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Before we jump into the show, I do want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is a publicly traded company that recently expanded to all 50 US states. It's the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, enable your independence with Bitcoin Well. What makes Bitcoin Well different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform, meaning as soon as you buy Bitcoin on the platform and the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. For higher net worth individuals, they just announced the Bitcoin Well Infinite product. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC. Bitcoin Well Infinite is tailored for higher net worth individuals that are looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more. So if you're tired of dealing with that clunky Coinbase UI and you want to deal with a real human being every time you want to buy, sell, or potentially have questions about Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite is for you. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email me at nico@bitcoinwell.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a jam-packed show for you guys. Let's jump straight into the numbers. Let's do this.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stampseed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to Stampseed.
All right, everybody, use promo code STAMPSEED, get 15% off anything on the store. Scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you directly to the website. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $101,420. Block height 874,424 sats per dollar. Under 1,000, we're sitting at 986 sats per dollar. Market cap 2.01 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, we're sitting at 10.77%. Percentage issued 94.26%. Decline from all-time high, negative 2.2%. Realized monetary inflation, we're sitting at 1.1%. In the grand scheme of things, we are still getting started. All right, everybody, I do want to show you guys this. We recently had a kind of like another video of Donald Trump. He apparently rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange yesterday. He apparently won Times, man of the year, whatever that thing was. But none of that is really important to what this show is all about. What is important is what he said in relation to our industry. So I have the clip for you guys. Let's check it out, and then we'll talk about it.
You're embracing crypto, very different from the previous administration. Strategic Petroleum Reserve like for crypto?
Yeah, I think so. We're going to do something great with crypto because we don't want China or anybody else, and not just China, but others are embracing.
So, I mean, that is absolutely massive. That is huge. And also, of course, we had the Bitcoin senator just announced with she's been working, or I don't know, working. I think competing is the better word, but essentially news just broke this morning that Dennis Porter was breaking this news that the state of Texas looks like it's following in the footsteps of the state of Pennsylvania, and apparently a state representative is introducing legislation to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the state of Texas. Senator Cynthia Lummis, the Bitcoin senator, responds with, states continue to lead the charge with the best ideas. So it looks like there's a little bit of competition between the federal level and the state level in terms of who's going to get a strategic Bitcoin reserve first, which I find fascinating. This is kind of the game theory coming into place. Of course, this is not a coincidence, but earlier on this week, we had news coming out of Russia that their equivalent of the House of Representatives, the Duma, there was a representative there that introduced legislation to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve for Russia, right? This is the game theory. It's playing out in real time. It's crazy. We can't believe this. So I want to get Frank's opinion on this. Frank, I mean, it's definitely a positive that we have a pro Bitcoin administration. There was points this year where me and Opti were literally actually asking ourselves, are we going to have to move to El Salvador because things were getting a little bit hairy? We know that this incoming administration is going to be much more pro Bitcoin, pro crypto. What is your perspective on the incoming administration? Because I believe the last time you were on the show, it was before the election. And then what is your perspective on the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Frank, the floor is all yours.
I think the great digital transformation will now accelerate. You see President-elect Trump in France with Elon Musk. You then see him on an airplane flying to South Texas, just south of San Antonio, where I am right now, to watch rockets take off. This is all kids will be going and focused on STEM learning, learning sciences, engineering, innovation, productivity. When you look at productivity in the stock market and you compare Europe versus what's happened in EU countries versus America, it's just a huge bifurcation. So I think that it bodes so well for Bitcoin because we're now seeing government embrace the digital world.
Yeah, and so, but does this surprise you? Like, Frank, you're 2017 first publicly traded Bitcoin miner. You know, it was a whole new world, because that was around my era when I was getting into Bitcoin. It was a whole new world. It was a different world back then from a regulatory. It was more of like it was like the wild. Let's be honest. It was like the Wild West, right? So, you know, is Bitcoin getting boring? Is it getting, you know, like legitimized? Like, what's going on here? What's this phenomenon?
It's about freedom. It's about sharing freedom digitally around the world. the great humanity peace button is about people realizing that they can turn around and save. What amazed me was a few weeks back, I was at Plan B in Lugano, and I was amazed at that time when they had 300 million wallets on Tether. That's an average of 4,000 for $120 billion. And when you're there, and what they share with you is that outside of the American bubble, and we're very critical of our deficit and the government, etc., outside of our world, they all want American dollars. They feel safe with American dollars. And if they feel safe with American dollars, and Americans are saying that we feel safe with having Bitcoin outside of paying dollars to pay bills, then it just bodes itself that Bitcoin is going to grow in that world. And now I believe Tether has $145 billion. They have more US treasuries than the government of Germany.
Yep.
They're like 5%, I'm told, of the weekly auction. So there are serious players in that ecosystem. But 300 million, that's the population of America that want to have American dollars, like Argentines, because they don't want the government to use the banks to be oppressive to them. And so I think it's a very exciting time. And we're going to have now AI, to use AI to take 70,000 pages of regulations and big, large language models and distill them down that you only need 7,000 because they're redundant. Well, that will unleash the creative capital. And you just showed the video of President Trump at the New York Stock Exchange. We didn't see this with President Biden going to the New York Stock Exchange before he was going to be before he was going to be inaugurated during this cycle. So you have a very different form going on. I think a great signal to Europe with Elon showing up over there, rocket scientist, a big Bitcoiner himself, and also I love the fact that he has the Doji coin, and the new government agents is Doji. I mean, there's something fascinating about, as Steve Jobs would say, connect the dots. But going back to 2017, I was mentioning earlier, every year I go to Harvard, and I play a student for a week, and all I do is take classes, etc. So this year, what we've done for Hive Swag, we've come out with the Harvard Hive look, the B.
I love it. I love it. We got to get Opti that hat.
Yeah, I need that hat.
and when I first spoke in 2018 about the creation of Hive, I basically got booed by my peers. Are you crazy? Are you nuts? They didn't like Elon Musk. It was really interesting to watch the transition of the significance of the digital transformation. Then coming out of COVID, all of a sudden now it's completely different. Everything is about Bitcoin. I was asked to go up to speak at Harvard to incoming class regarding Bitcoin as a store of wealth. So it is, the transformation is growing and it's going. And I'm so excited about being part of it. It's just a thrill to be creative in this new world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a new world, and I really enjoyed that Lugano conference. I think they did an incredible job. I think I was on stage and you were sitting in the front row. That was the first time we actually saw each other in person, Frank. But yeah, it was eye-opening, and this is something that I think a lot of Bitcoiners have not fully wrapped their head around. But what we're seeing in the developing world is you're seeing mass adoption of Tether as people continue to flock away from their local fiat currencies, and they find stability in the dollar, right? And of course, as Americans, we're looking at it from a different perspective because we see the inflation from our perspective. But if you're living in a country with double-digit inflation, the dollar to you is the most stable thing that you can ever imagine, right? But this is really exciting stuff because I like the way that Paolo put it and Samson Mao put it too, is that I really see Tether as kind of like this stepping stone into Bitcoin. Like, you're getting people comfortable with these digital wallets on their phones. You're getting people comfortable of using an alternative to the system, to opening a bank account, dealing with cash. And it seems like they have found massive, massive success. And I completely agree with you. This is extremely exciting. It's going to be a very, very exciting world. And who could have ever have imagined, the president of the United States, not only dropping, wishing the industry well, but also congratulating Bitcoiners on Bitcoin hitting 100K. Like that's amazing to me. Opti, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I really love this development of Trump being, a pro Bitcoin advocate. Obviously, he's saying crypto, but hey, I love the fact that he wants to pump our bags. We mentioned it yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was yesterday, where he wants, 150K very early on in his first year. I was trolling and saying 150K day one. Like, I'm all for this, Trump. But no, I think it kind of goes to really what we've been saying about BlackRock. Now BlackRock's out there kind of educating their client base. We have Trump out there being like a lightning rod for Bitcoin. So as much as, he's a divisive figure and a lot of people don't like him, I think he's making a lot of waves in regards to the adoption of Bitcoin, or at least bringing attention to Bitcoin. Now it's becoming a very viable alternative to fiat currencies, the dollar in particular. And it is very interesting. Like I've been saying for a while, ever since the Trump news came out, every other country has to take Bitcoin very seriously. And so like now I love to see this. He keeps getting asked about Bitcoin on the corporate press. He's always I think he's kind of falling into, Trump historically just loves winners. And I think he's starting to understand that, like, by embracing Bitcoin, not only will he be a winner, but it also embraces the culture of winning. And I think this is why we're seeing these sound bites come out from his children being like, yeah, fully orange pilled, loving Bitcoin, pumping Bitcoin, understanding what it actually means and where we're headed into the future. So I really love this development. Now, kind of pivoting to the Texas Strategic Reserve Bill on the state levels, this is the beauty of America, is that we do have a federal mandate, and then we have state mandates. And being in Texas right now, I love the fact that Texas is proposing this. I really do hope that it actually gets passed. Obviously, it's just an initial proposal. And a lot of people, I don't think, really understand the play that Texas is making. I know since I'm in Texas, I kind of hear this news more than probably our audience does. But Dallas right now is making a play on doing like a, Texas Wall Street. And so if Texas embraces Bitcoin, if Dallas and the new, Texas Wall Street makes a play and embraces Bitcoin, like I think that is a huge, huge play for not only obviously Texas, but for Bitcoin in general. And hey, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Hopefully this does get passed through. Maybe, Dennis is going to beat Trump on getting a strategic reserve bill on a state level. And that game theory is going to be absolutely crazy. Then, hey, if it's Texas, they're going to be the first leader here. They're going to be the first person to adopt it, and then we'll see other states follow through. And so it's going to be interesting whether the strategic Bitcoin reserve bill gets passed on a federal level or a state level first, and then that impact and those ripples that will obviously make waves around the world. And it's going to be very clear that, hey, if you don't adopt Bitcoin, you're being left behind. And we're seeing the signal from other countries as well, being like, well, we have to actually take this seriously. So it's going to be interesting whether the U.S. adopts a strategic Bitcoin reserve first, or another country, or rather a state in America. So, hey, the game theory is heating up, and, I just love to see it, because this is our mission, is to get more people holding Bitcoin, more people taking Bitcoin seriously. This is how we win, is people holding and understanding Bitcoin. But as we keep covering, there's still a uphill battle in educating people on what Bitcoin is. Like Frank was saying, a lot of people just want the exposure to the Bitcoin price increase. In reality, there's a lot of things going on under the hood that people don't understand yet. And hey, it looks like we still have a job for a little bit, Nico.
Absolutely. We might have to just change the name to just Simply.
I like to compliment what your thoughts were. Other things that are happening in the great nation of Texas is the concept of having a New York Stock Exchange, sort of its own stock exchange in Dallas. But one of the things in the rule of law, and Bitcoin is really caught up with common law, rule of law, this is my private property, this is my digital property, is what they call a chancery court. In a chancery court are judges that are not elected but appointed by the Supreme Court mechanism. And those judges have an expertise on settling business disputes. So when we look at America, the number one state is Delaware. Delaware has a chancery court system, and it has the most case law. Well, what's interesting in September of this year is Governor Abbott is pushed forward, and they now have a chancery court in Texas, and they have appointed 10 business judges. So that means that Texas is now going to take on Delaware. And if you recall, Elon Musk went through all that drama with the Delaware court system being politicized, not outside of the realm of business. It became over a political wrestling ring. Now the state of Texas is going to basically make Delaware irrelevant.
Absolutely, and I might have to leave Miami, Florida, and just move over there and join Opti. It's bullish on Texas, but
Come
yeah,
to Texas.
That was a huge mistake by Delaware. And again, what to me, in the Elon case, the shareholders voted twice to give him that type of compensation, and the government steps in and says you can't do that. Is this a capitalist society? Like, aren't the shareholders in control, or is the government in control? And I agree with you, Frank. I think that created a huge opportunity for Texas to step in and say, we'll take your business here. And I also do believe that I believe Tesla moved their headquarters to Texas, right? And I know that you guys are located in Texas as well. Maybe perhaps Simply will be headquartered in Texas very, very soon. So guys, we just broke 2,200 live viewers across YouTube, Rumble, and X. Help us break 250 likes within the first, we're almost at 200 likes. Help us break 250 likes within the first 45 minutes of the show. And we're about to break 700 live viewers just on YouTube alone. So it's a great show. Glad you guys are enjoying it. Let's get to the news. We have tons to talk about. Let's check it out. We'll be right back.
I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with the UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your peace of.
This is Opti, and
New
he's
phone,
not
who
make-
dis?
He's not making a phone call. He's actually on the Passport by Foundation Devices. Remember, guys, not your keys, not your cheese. This is the perfect gift to give to somebody, not Opti, but the hardware wallet. The perfect gift to give to somebody that perhaps is a little bit intimidated by self-custody, but the Passport doesn't sacrifice security for convenience. And if you use promo code SIMPLY, you will get a discount. Anyways, I do want to take advantage of the fact that we have the CEO of a publicly traded company to get his perspective on these crazy developments that have been happening. So first off, Amazon shareholders push for a minimum 5% Bitcoin allocation. And of course, we had the news of Microsoft essentially slapping down the idea of putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, on essentially replacing some of their cash or cash equivalents with Bitcoin. I want to get your perspective on this, Frank, because this is insane news. This is big news. We could have never have imagined this 5 years ago or so. So what is going on?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
So I want to get your perspective on these non-Bitcoin related companies looking at Bitcoin, for example, Amazon and Microsoft, to potentially add Bitcoin to their balance sheets. What is your perspective on that?
I think that if you have a mechanism that you're accepting Bitcoin for selling your products or services, then it's only rational that you would own some Bitcoin on your balance sheet. So that comes back to Tesla. Tesla's will let you buy a car with crypto. So that makes it wise that they own some of their balance sheet. Amazon, I don't really, actually, this is a good question. I don't know how many products you can really buy with crypto on Amazon.
So, and let me ask you something, Frank. Do you think that, for example, the companies that have already adopted Bitcoin and have it on their balance sheet, do you think that they have a competitive advantage compared, like HIVE? Do you think they have a competitive advantage to the companies that are going to take a lot longer to adopt Bitcoin and kind of integrate it within their companies?
I think it's a smarter strategy. That's what I think it is. The competitive advantage is it's hard to say, because when you're running a public company and you have all these allocations of capital from equipment, etc., it makes it difficult to make answer that statement that way. But what we are seeing in the crypto mining space, the majors are not looking to expand the way they were before. They'd rather just buy Bitcoin. I think that is a real important statement of allocation of capital, rather than trying to get to 50 exahash or to 100 exahash. It is now we're going to float convertibles to buy more Bitcoin and have a bigger holdable position on our balance sheet. That's a very different strategy than building a manufacturing facility to make Tesla cars or Bitcoin mining. And it's just recognizing it's a different strategy.
And what would you say, like, so could you explain to the audience, you're talking about exahashes, you're talking about kind of building this out, but perhaps a lot of people are not. My experience just dealing with Bitcoiners in general is that they like the wallets, they use the wallets, they love this network, right? But perhaps they're not informed, or perhaps they don't deeply appreciate the infrastructure that is behind the Bitcoin network. So could you talk a little bit about that, Frank? This exahash rollout strategy.
Yeah, I think that what's important for the listeners is that Bitcoin network was built by the people for the people. It wasn't built by a government or a government agency, and it's incrementally grown to now there's over 20,000 nodes. And what do nodes do? They validate and support the peer-to-peer global network. There are 195 countries, so think of maybe 195 central banks, but there are over 20,000 nodes which function as a financial validator, like a central bank. So I think that that's what's really important to recognize, that it's grown by over 10% over the past year. So that's very, very positive for the overall growth of the industry.
What's your take, Frank, on nation state mining, right? The Bitcoin MENA conference was just wrapped up. You're hearing news coming out of Russia, Bhutan, I've heard some rumblings out of Paraguay, right, about nation states wanting to take advantage of their excess energy or stranded energy, and they're looking into Bitcoin mining. What's your perspective on that?
I think there's two motives. One, the more sophisticated motive is what we've tried to articulate in Paraguay, is that their banks could not put on a currency hedge for their utility company the way a Bitcoin miner can. And what I mean by that is that they sell their energy for 2 cents to Argentina, and Argentina doesn't pay for 2 years. Well, how do they pay their own bills at home? They're selling out, and their accounts receivable are growing and growing. And Milei finally gave them a month ago half of $100 million he owed them. And I think that Bitcoin miners, we just do it every month. It's simple. And it's built by the capital markets. It's built by individuals and listeners that are on your program, all taking a little piece of HIVE or of another crypto mining company, and that funding turns around to build these facilities. Then we have the other part is where you had a lot of these dams built by World Bank and the IMF, etc., and there was no follow through on infrastructure. Like in Paraguay, where we are, we have to build a power station. We have to build a substation. And because the wires are there, all this big high voltage, which would blow up a toaster in a nanosecond, it has to go down and get stepped down till all of a sudden you can put it into your facilities to mine Bitcoin. They've lacked the capital, especially with not getting paid, to build out the infrastructure for all these communities. And the Bitcoin miners are the solution to this. So every Bitcoin miner that's gone into Paraguay has ended up having to spend from $8 to $20 million building these substations. And the same thing now you're seeing in Ethiopia, that you have to walk in with this sort of build out. And how do you bank the unbankables on the unbanked people in Africa? Well, first of all, it came from what's called M-Pesa. And 2009 it came out, no, 2006. M-Pesa came out of the technology for your cell phone that you could turn around and trade money on your cell phone. You didn't need a bank account because these poor villagers couldn't get a bank account. They were unbankable. So now there's 50 million people using this, and it's 10% of the GDP of Kenya. So it's recognizing the digital world is growing. M-Pesa is centralized. Bitcoin is decentralized, creating a difference. But in comes the Bitcoin miners that facilitate the ability for people to be able to have the data centers, to be able to build the power stations, to get electricity to their huts. I think is extremely positive. What does Russia need? They want US dollars. They've been blocked out of the world's market. They're trying to do everything to get US dollars, just like other countries in the world want US dollars.
And Frank, I because we were talking about this off air, and I can't emphasize that enough in regards to the Paraguay stuff. You guys are going in there, and let's say the high level kind of infrastructure is there. You're building this out, obviously, because it benefits you guys. You guys are seeing stranded energy, but this is also infrastructure that the local communities are going to be able to tap into. And for the first time, they have electricity. And this is like counterintuitive to what, you hear from some of the legacy media basically saying, Bitcoin mining is bad, but I'm hearing that. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. Bitcoin miners are going in there and they're putting in the work. They're investing their own capital to build this infrastructure out, which the local community is going to benefit from. And of course, the Bitcoin miners are going to not only employ, I'm assuming you guys are employing people there locally as well, but also you guys are going to get access to cheap electricity. That sounds like a win-win situation for all parties, if you ask me.
Yes, and when we were there last week, the dam is so big. It's 7 kilometers, almost 5 miles. A dam. Just think of that.
Frank, what's the name of the dam so Opti could pull it up?
It's a Tubi.
My
Tubi. Phonetics are terrible.
All right, we'll pull it up. So sorry, didn't want to interrupt you. What were you saying?
ITAPAU. But what's important here is that it was built 50 years ago. 50 years ago. And so where is the additional infrastructure that can take this economy to something of significance? They finally paid off all the loans, and now it's supposedly throwing off $2 billion in cash flow, but now they have more maintenance with it. But these projects, this is the biggest dam in the Western Hemisphere, the third biggest dam in the world, and it's really significant that Bitcoin comes along and it can facilitate the growth. And like I went along the whole wall, and it just really it's immense. And I went down to as a group, we went down to the bedrock of this facility. So it has surplus electricity, and I think you're going to see Bitcoiners help build out that ecosystem. But where it's much further behind is when you go to Ethiopia. If you look on an emergent scale, where people literally live in huts, I would say Paraguayans live pretty well in the scheme of things. If you look at, they have a flat tax of 10%. You have a very rich soil, very rich. And it shows as low as GDP per capita, or second lowest in Latin America. But the taxes are so low, so the take-home pay is actually more. And I think that when you go to countries like Ethiopia, well, this will really help both countries like that, in particular, fast track their emergence and take people out of poverty.
And it's absolutely beautiful to hear that, right? And especially in Ethiopia, very low income country, and just Bitcoin miners are going in there. Of course, they're going in there following their own incentives, but this is one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin. It's an aligned incentive structure system, right? This is why it works. This is why it's so beautiful. Everyone wins, right? You go in there, you help build out this infrastructure. The local population is going to benefit from it, not only from employment, but also they're going to have electricity. They're going to have reliable running electricity. Bitcoin miners provide that without the necessity of going through some of these predatory institutions like the IMF, like, the World Bank, right? So it's very, very exciting stuff. And we're going to talk more about it, guys. So stick around for the culture. We're going to do a deep dive into HIVE digital technologies. We'll be right back.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here, HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, everybody, before we jump into we'll do it at the end. I just want to jump straight into it. Frank, how did we do? How was experiencing the first HIVE Digital Tech Simply Bitcoin ad?
Outstanding.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
And for all the listeners, for the swag, they got to reach out to Nathan fast, and you can get one of these nice hats, or you can, for blue, if you got blue jeans, and if you want to have the Harvard look, then you can have this color. So reach out to Nathan. I think you have his email there, and you'll get his contacts from you, and we'll send you some of the swag with the busy bee, the golden bee.
Absolutely, guys. For our audio listeners, go to the email is nathan@hivedigitaltech.com, and we'll send you some free HIVE merch. So many different colors. We got the Harvard Burgundy, which is my personal favorite. I want Opti to wear that one. But anyways, guys, we're going to dive into everything HIVE right now. Opti, the floor is yours.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, Frank, you just dropped an incredible press release. And so you basically laid it out that you guys have had an enormous November. So can you lay that out for the audience here? How is HIVE doing in November? You guys are stacking a lot of Bitcoin. You have some awesome goals for 2025. So maybe just start there. How has November been for you guys at HIVE? And then we'll move into what you guys are thinking for the future.
So we're going to basically, our announcement was that our total position of stacking Bitcoin mined from sources of green energy surged 67% on a year-over-year basis. So we're really proud of that on our balance sheet for the shareholders. And also we made the critical path that not only did we secure the energy of 100 megawatts in Paraguay for growth, we then secured the machines that we need to build out our facilities, and that we expect by the summer to go from 5.5 exahash to about 15 exahash. So we're looking close to a 300% increase, which would take us about 2% of the global Bitcoin network based on today's difficulty rate. So we're happy that we've been able to have a critical path. It's the next 6 months. And hopefully between now and then, we'll have some other excitement announcements to take it from 15 to higher. But the big thing is to be able to go source good quality energy.
Love it, love it. And just the Easter egg here is this isn't just an announcement. You guys are already on the path of getting 15 exahashes. You guys have secured the spot. You got the ASICs out there, so that's incredible to hear. But actually, Frank, I do kind of want to pivot this a little bit, because you have been talking about Paraguay all show, and you were kind of giving us some insights into what the adoption levels are in Paraguay, what their thinking is, and I think that's very interesting for our audience to understand.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if you can reveal this, Frank. Where is the location? And also, someone in the chat really wants you to put the Santa hat back on, but I'll leave that up to you. But where is the could you reveal the location of the site of the fixed 15 exahash?
It's close to the capital city, Asuncion. It's like an hour and a half drive. If you go early in the morning, it's an hour. So it's relatively close. The facilities that we visited throughout the southern part of Paraguay, they're a couple hours by helicopter or by plane to go to the dam from the capital city. It's probably a drive from San Antonio to Dallas. It's a 5-hour drive if you want to drive from the capital city to the dam. Basically, is the dimensions for people. So our facility's pretty close to the capital city.
So, okay, very cool. And is this have to do with the dam that you were just talking about?
Yeah, the dam lights up the whole country, and it lights up the electricity. It lights up, half of the electricity is going off to, or not a total half, but to Brazil. It's a joint venture between Paraguay and Brazil, and it goes right down the middle of the two countries. And they get to sell some of the electricity to neighboring countries like Bolivia or Argentina, and that's what Paraguay does. And so that's the uniqueness of this.
That is so cool. All right, Opti, sorry to hijack it from you. I'm just very, very fascinating on this because Nathan was telling me, he's like, Frank's on these adventures, he's on this helicopter, he's going to dams, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. So I just want to get an insight. So that is really, really cool. This new site being rolled out, Opti.
I learned from the gold mining business that when I start to roll out into Colombia in serious size, I had to meet the president of the country. At that time, it was Uribe, and he had such a strong vision for the country. And we'd own a gold mine, a big piece of it in Venezuela, which is being basically taken over by gold fields. And so we were happy to get out of that country to go into Colombia. So going into Paraguay was the same sort of journey that I wanted to go and meet the president, understand where he's coming from. I can read about him, but to be able to embrace his vision. And his background is highly educated in America, worked for the IMF, has a sort of big institutional mindset. He's very proud of their credit rating. Their bonds, the Paraguayan government bonds are rated. So it's a very stable country compared to other countries in Latin America. On the last trip, though, was much more granular of going to meet the head of, let's say, the Democrats and the Republican Party. Went to their Congress, had a private meeting with both heads, and it was thrilled to see that both were very pro-Bitcoin and see the benefits for their country. And then flew out, got on a chopper and flew to Venezuela, where we are for our facilities being built. And that was to meet the governor and sort of get a feel for what his needs were for our strategy of being involved in the community as early as possible, rather than get this sort of bad name that these are Bitcoin miners over there, and it's just not to I guess manage the negative narrative that's been floated around the world with so much FUD. So that's what we've done a preemptive move with.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So exciting. Opti, I know you have more questions for Frank. It's all yours.
Yeah, I mean, actually, our audience loves just like a general mining update. And I know the mining space has gotten way more competitive. Hash rate is flying right now. So maybe I don't want to put you on the spot and say some predictions for 2025, but what is your general view right now of the larger mining conversation that you're seeing from your perspective and your vantage as, you know, HIVE, publicly traded Bitcoin mining company?
I think that as the US dollar stays strong relative to other countries' currencies, other countries are going to be desperate if they're not selling products to the US to get US dollars, to get dollars. And so you're going to see them coming into Bitcoin mining. So that will make the difficulty more difficult. That's just, I think, what is going to see unfold. And so you have to have two things. One, you need to have stable, inexpensive electricity, and you have to upgrade your machinery to have the most efficient machines. Now, for the more technical people, what that means is the joules of consumption of electricity you're using. So a lot of these machines from the previous halving were 34, 35, and 30 joules per second. And now we're getting under that. And so our game plan is to get this down to 23 joules per second, then get it down to the teens per second. So that allows us to deal with the difficulty rising. And if Bitcoin doesn't rise, so you're going to get margin compression. The way to alleviate that margin compression is to have more energy efficient machines. That is where the bigger CapEx spend. But the best and easiest way is cheap electricity. And if you can get 2-cent electricity, even S9s could be profitable today. So that's a real shocker. So the most expensive line item in running a Bitcoin mining business is your electrical bill. And the most important factor for having a profit margin to continue to grow is to have as stable, cheap electricity.
But that's the opportunity, right, Frank? Is like, you know, we were talking about this earlier, right? Where Bitcoin miners it's like they're like water. They naturally want to seek out stranded energy or isolated energy because that stranded energy, that isolated energy is very cheap, right? And you're going to otherwise isolated or forgotten communities, and you're going in there. And I don't want to correctly, I don't want to relate it to the gold rush, because as soon as the gold ran out, you know, a lot of these mining towns and the old West just dried up. But that's obviously not going to be the case with Bitcoin miners, in my opinion. But, you know, it kind of reminds me of that, where you're going to, for example, Paraguay, you're going to Ethiopia, and you're essentially building out these communities that have a tremendous amount of excess energy, stranded energy, however you want to call it. And you're essentially going in there and giving these people hope and opportunity with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. What's your take?
Well, when you look at gold, San Francisco is basically built around the world of gold. And in many communities grow from that. And if you want to take a look and look at, say, what Bitcoin mining does, it electrifies. Electricity is the key component. And it's much more of it creates a more democratic process for electrifying a community where there's lights on, there's electricity for the schools. It could be that they need heat, or it could be they need air conditioning, but you need to have electricity, and Bitcoin is that stepping stone to electrifying all these sort of stranded areas. The other part is, if you can get cheap electricity, you can do variable. It's still very attractive. If you give me 2-cent electricity and you tell me out of 24 hours, I'm only going to be able to use it for 15 hours, but at 2-cent electricity, it's still going to be very profitable. There's not many businesses that can do that. There's not many businesses where you're going to build a building, an infrastructure, a warehouse, and all these parts, and say that, well, you're not going to have enough electricity for your whole day. So I think that that's where it is just a critical stepping stone. And then when we take it to the financial level of running a country or utility company, it gives them a steady source of stable US dollars every month.
That's absolutely, it's incredible. Frank, what are your plans for, if you can reveal them, what do you have in mind for 2025 for HIVE Digital Technologies? What do you like? Everyone's expecting the year of the parabola. Everyone's very, very hyped up. What do you have in store that you can reveal?
Well, we're building our exahash, which is really important for us, and building our holder position, which is also very important. And then we're expanding our footprint in the HPC realm, and working on securing. We're much more conservative before we make a press release that we've secured electricity and a property and an asset. Then I noticed some of our peers do the liberty, but I'm a money manager. I think I take a more conservative approach. But we have some huge things coming down the pipe for the HPC, and we're buying more NVIDIA chips. And that business is throwing off stronger free cash flow every day. And so we're happy about that. And we see that business is going to become like, our goal is simple goals is to get our 15 exahash, which is about 300 million in revenue. And it's also to go out to build out our HPC to get another 300 million in revenue from HPC. So they're running parallel. Bitcoin is ahead of the HPC. But when the HPC happens, it has these sort of quantum leaps of how it progresses.
And that's another thing also, Frank, that perhaps a lot of people don't understand about your company, right? You guys are focusing on AI as well, right? And one of the stories that you were telling me is back in the early era, you guys were focusing a lot on when Ethereum was proof of work before it switched to proof of stake. You guys had a lot of GPUs, and what you guys were able to do is repurpose a lot of those GPUs towards AI. So could you talk a little bit about HIVE's AI strategy and just AI in general? Because that seems like it's all the buzz these days.
Well, one of the interesting parts was that we were green only, and that opened up that Intel wanted to do a business deal with us. And then same thing with NVIDIA. NVIDIA sold GPU chips to other companies like Hut 8, but they could only mine Ethereum. So when Ethereum went away, those machines were useless. Because of our green and our strategy, we were able to secure a suite of NVIDIA chips that allowed us to go into this breakout in the AI world, and which they call HPC, high performance computing, and the super scaling. And so that is what it allowed us to do. Our first stepping stone was to go on these platforms to repurpose our machines without going out and having a big sales force and a big data center, is eking out cash flow from the machines we've already expensed and got our money back mining Ethereum. Now we're going to all of a sudden allow coders to come and rent from us on a per hour basis our machines. And what's interesting is that it was expected a year ago that OpenChat would do $1 billion to $1.5 billion in revenue, and now they're talking about $5.5 to $6 billion this year. So it's blowing it out, the numbers with OpenChat, and Perplexity is another one of these service providers that they've gone up massively. And Elon Musk's AI company, it's gone from the original seeding of of something like $3.5 billion to now worth $50 billion. That gives a massive increase, and it's because there's so many coders and so much venture capital is going into this space. So we think that we're riding this super cycle, and the big part was for us was to secure this consistent energy for the HPC, which we're getting close to and just working away like every mining company is doing. What we did see with Core Scientific was that they had a lot of surplus energy. CoreWeave had a bunch of GPU chips, but they didn't have the energy to plug them in. So they went to do a JV with Core Scientific to get access to their electricity, and CoreWeave had to fund the development of those data centers. So in simple terms, data centers come in like 4 tiers. And when you're a Bitcoin miner, it's $1 million a megawatt for simplicity. When you want to go into high performance computing for HPC, it's $10 million.
Wow.
So it's a big front end load, but you get the same revenue. So if I go build 10 megawatts of HPC, I will be the same as 100 megawatts of Bitcoin mining.
What this is fascinating to me. So hold on. Why is it so much more expensive to build out facilities for 10 times more expensive to build out facilities for high performance computing versus just traditional Bitcoin mining ASICs?
Well, first we talked earlier about balancing the grid. Mm-hmm. When AI, you can't be balancing the grid. The electricity has to be there all the time, especially if it's an air traffic control tower, or it's a surgeon, or if someone's flying an airplane. You have to be up all the time. And so you can't have this variable electricity. So if something goes down, then you need big backup generators. You have to have usually natural gas or oil generators so that for those 2 hours or 3 hours or a day that the electricity goes down, the interruption is not acceptable. You will lose that business. And that makes a big difference. So you have to have redundancy. Now we come to what's called security, and there's not just redundancy, it's redundancy of the fiber optics. You want 2 different service providers in case AT&T, remember just 6 weeks ago, Microsoft blew up the world when they're went to upgrade their system, and all the United Airlines and all the flights the world became discombobulated on that simple Microsoft system. Well, that affected half of the airlines, and it's interesting to see. So data centers themselves can't do that. They would have to have 2 service providers, and now we're going into these NVIDIA chips. Well, the Blackwell, you need a pipe this big, not this big, this big, and the electrical pipes fueling that, and the cables between all the GPU chips and the CPUs, they have to be special cables because you're building a brain, and so it's using much more energy, and therefore you need redundancy and coolant system. So your coolant system, so half of those data centers is nothing but backup coolant and air conditioning systems and battery systems. That's the big front end load. And if you go tier 4, like for the US government, for NSA, $15 million a megawatt.
This is absolutely blowing my mind. I've learned so much on this show. Just the
That's
different
before the
facility.
chips, by the way. You haven't bought the chips. You haven't bought the chips. The chips are another $10 million per megawatt.
Wow. Oh my God, that's insane. That's insane. It's definitely a brave new world, Frank. We are getting close to the top of the hour. I want to give you the opportunity to say the last words. There's currently 2,900 people watching live right now between all the platforms. Smash the like button, everybody, if you guys are enjoying the show. Frank,
ho ho ho!
What are your final words towards the audience?
If you're not long, you'll be wrong.
Oof, I love it. I love it.
Let's go.
I love it. All right, guys, this was Simply Bitcoin Live for December 12th, 2024. I'm your host, Nico. My legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. And of course, our special guest today, we have the CEO of HIVE Digital Technologies, Frank Holmes.
No, not the CEO. I'm the executive chair.
Executive chair. I apologize.
He's a much smarter guy. I didn't kill it. He's an electrical engineer. He's the CEO.
We have the executive chair of HIVE Digital Technologies there. Got it right the second time. Joining us, Frank Holmes. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow for a brand new episode. Peace out, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.